One of the biggest AI tools in the world just got hit with a massive user revolt. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how a secret deal with the Pentagon pushed more than 1 million people to walk away from ChatGPT all in a single weekend.
So let's start with a number. 1.5 million. That's how many people pledged to quit ChatGPT in just one weekend. Now, this wasn't because of a product update or some server outage. No, this was all because of a single government contract that its biggest rival had just flat out refused to sign.
To really get why there was so much backlash, we have to rewind a little bit. We need to look at the ethical standoff that happened right before the deal, a major confrontation between the Pentagon and two of the biggest AI companies on the planet. Okay, so this is where you can see the fundamental clash. On one side, you have Anthropic, the folks who make the AI assistant Claude. They drew a hard line in the sand. They refused to let their tech be used for autonomous weapons. We're talking systems that can make lethal decisions without a human or for mass surveillance. But on the other side, the Pentagon was pushing for what they called an all-lawful purpose clause, which would basically grant them unrestricted access to the AI's capabilities. So, when Anthropic said no, it set off this crazy chain reaction. Their refusal created a vacuum. And that vacuum, well, it was filled almost immediately in a move that sent some serious shockwaves through the entire AI community. And just look at how fast this all went down. It's wild. On February 24th, the Pentagon issues its deadline. Just 2 days later, Anthropic refuses. That very same day, the government blacklists the company, calling them a supply chain risk. And then, just 48 hours after that, OpenAI quietly signs on the dotted line, accepting the exact same terms that got its competitor punished. Right, so the devil is always in the details, isn't it? When the OpenAI contract came out, critics and even some of their own employees immediately pointed to this specific language. The agreement said no intentional or targeted surveillance. But what about surveillance that was incidental or unintentional? To a lot of people, that looked like a loophole you could drive a truck through. As news of the deal and that controversial wording started to spread, the public reaction was just swift and fierce. People felt betrayed, And what started as some chatter on Reddit quickly blew up into a full-blown online revolt. The numbers here really tell the story of the backlash. The day after the deal was announced, uninstalls of the ChatGPT mobile app in the US surged by a staggering 295%. Let that sink in. That's nearly a 300% increase over a normal day. This wasn't just a few people protesting. This was a mass exodus. And all that anger spilled right into the app stores. 1-star reviews just exploded, jumping by 775%. And at the same time, the positive 5-star reviews got cut in half. So users weren't just leaving, they were actively trying to tank the app's public rating to send a really clear message. And while all this was happening to ChatGPT, its rival was reaping the rewards. Downloads for Anthropic's Claude spiked, and for the first time ever, it shot all the way to the #1 spot on the US App Store. It was pretty clear the public was rewarding the company that said no. So you can imagine, OpenAI was facing a public relations catastrophe. User sentiment was tanking. They had to act fast. CEO Sam Altman jumped on social media and held internal meetings to try and get a handle on this growing crisis. In a public post, Altman was pretty blunt. He straight up admitted the company had fumbled the announcement. He acknowledged that the timing, dropping it late on a Friday, and the lack of clear communication just made a really complex situation a whole lot worse. And he didn't stop there. He conceded that from the outside, the whole move looked opportunistic and sloppy. He tried to frame this whole mess as a good learning experience for the company as they navigate even bigger decisions down the road. And now the company is doing more than just saying sorry. It's reportedly in a second round of negotiations to actually change the contract, to add explicit language against domestic surveillance, and build in new technical safeguards. And in a pretty surprising twist, Altman even called on the government to reverse its ban on Anthropic, his main competitor. So this whole controversy really boils down to a critical question for every single person who uses AI. What happens to your personal data when the company holding it signs a deal that you just fundamentally disagree with? So you decide to leave. You hit that delete button, but is your data actually gone? Well, according to sources, the whole account deletion process can take up to 30 days,
And even then, OpenAI's policy states they can still hold on to some of your data to comply with legal obligations, a phrase that is, let's be honest, frustratingly vague.
For users who do decide to leave, sources have recommended this specific three-step process to make sure it's a clean break. First, export and save your own data. Second, request the deletion of your account. And only then, third, do you cancel your subscription payment.
This is the reality that really struck a nerve with so many people. Your data doesn't just disappear when you do. Every private conversation, every creative idea you've ever typed into that chat box is now stored on servers owned by a company with a direct military contract. Just deleting the app from your phone doesn't change that fact.
Ultimately, this whole episode forces us to face a massive question about the future of AI. As this technology gets more and more powerful, who gets to decide its ethical boundaries? Should it be the tech executives building it, the governments who want to use it, or the millions of users whose data powers the whole thing?